Welcome to From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. I'm your host, a holistic healing coach, divorce recovery coach, and a passionate advocate for personal growth and your guide on the journey to healing. This podcast is for those who are struggling with the feelings of loneliness, disconnection, feeling stuck, and who are ready to discover their inner potential and live a life overflowing with love and connection. Inside, we're going to explore the path from pain to transformation, bridging the gap between loneliness and abundance through heartfelt conversation, spirituality, energy work, and self-awareness. So let's get started on this soulful journey together. Welcome to another episode from Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. Today's guest is someone who is very good with words, someone who has articulated many books and has, through her poetry, exuded her emotions in such a humble way that when I read the poetry and when I read her book, it was like, oh my God, that is horrible. And the other part that's horrible is that I can resonate with it. But the poetry itself exudes so much grace, so much humility, so much neutralness that it's almost like, where are you writing from? From which energy field are you writing? Because you're not writing from the hurtful 3D exposure of what we get to live in sometimes, where we are enraged, where we are expressing ourselves in so much painful experiences where the other person is to blame. None of the poetry that I read was about blame. It was about an authentic soul sharing her journey of hardship and having so much grace around it. So I can't wait for this conversation because it's going to help me, the listeners, everyone, to understand how they can up-level themselves and how this beautiful soul has created ways for her child, to build a better life after those experiences. So without delay, welcome Devangini.
Hi, Matina. Thank you so much, and so humbling to hear praise coming from you, somebody who I absolutely adore and respect. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. There is magic in your writing. There is truly magic in the writing, but there's also it's so full of emotion. And that type of writing, it goes beyond. So,
thank you for recognizing it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for writing it and being so authentic with it as well. Today, before we even dive into the conversation, tell me more about you. Tell the listeners, what do they need to know about Devangini?
What do they need to know about me, about Devangini? Well, I am basically a storyteller, and I love to tell stories that connect dots. I love to help people tell their own stories, connect the dots, find new neural pathways in the neuroscience of their brain and in the quantum vastness of the universe, find a version of themselves and a new story to tell through that version of themselves. So whether I'm doing it through books, whether I'm doing it through coaching, whether I'm doing it through scripting, or whether I'm just doing it through a conversation like this, that's my purpose. That's why I'm here. That's what I do.
I love that. What you really truly said right now is to see themselves through a different lens.
Yes.
And the fact that you are teaching it tells me that you have learned it for yourself, that you have rewritten your script many times and multiple times to really live a life that is in alignment with you. Mm-hmm. So let's take the listeners a little bit back and really start with the key question. What was your loneliness or disconnection moment that has led you into your overflow?
I think it was a series of moments of disconnection. I don't know that it was one moment. I think, it starts out with this brief understanding or this brief glimmer of awareness. I think I was 6 or 7 years old when it began. And I knew that, okay, there is something here that is not getting me, that I'm not getting. There's something in the world around me that is trying to tell me that you're more than this. You're far removed from this, but at the same time, you are in this. So you have to make sense of this. And so the challenges came to show me how wide that disconnect is, how wide that gap is. Whether it was by way of my first marriage, whether it was, when I started my business as a publisher, as a single mother, whether it was moving here to another country and taking another chance with love, saying yes to my absolute best friend, my soulmate, finding that person when I wasn't even looking for him. I think the moments of disconnect helped me connect even more deeply with myself, because I fully immersed myself in every moment that made me feel like there's a disconnect here. I don't get this. So that led to the question of then, what is it that is more me? What is it that I want to be? So I'm actually eternally grateful for those moments of disconnection and being able to see that, okay, there are people who, in your everyday life, they're like, but this is how it is. We've all tolerated it. We've all gone through it. It's okay, whether it's a divorce, whether it's, a job that you don't like, but it pays your bills, whether it's anything and everything, right? The knowing that there is a disconnection and being able to do something about it are two different things. And I'm just grateful I was able to bridge that gap every single time, tell a new story every single time and get here. So,
yeah. We do have choices to make, and we do get to choose. Are we going to be one of those who is like, this is the way it is, can't do nothing about it, or it's not on me, it's on the other person, or it's on the other thing, or it's on the job, or whatever else you're looking at.
Exactly.
I want to ask you, let's take us into a specific moment in time where you felt that disconnection and how you guided yourself into asking those questions and into rewiring your script and finding another way of life. Can you bring us back to a specific moment in time?
Absolutely, yes. This is when I had to decide on which path to take in terms of my first marriage. I was in a marriage where I wasn't very sure I belonged there at all from day one. And I don't think he did either. But for the sake of what we were being told, we both were like, okay, we're doing this, for better or for worse, we're doing this. And there was, tons of strife, tons of fighting. There was some abuse that I withstood. And finally, and there was nothing that we could agree on. Finally, we both sat down, and the first time we agreed on something in 10 years was, let's not do this anymore. We have a child. Let's do right by this kid. We have a beautiful child. Let's rearrange our family dynamics. So I had the luxury, of course, of being able to do this. A lot of women and men don't. So I still remember sitting down with him that for the first time, we both had a sane, mutually respectful conversation. And I think in that instant, my brain got rewired and I suddenly saw possibilities. In that moment, I realized anything is possible. This version that I have been told to be, a good girl, a good wife, a good mommy, who stays with the husband no matter what because the child needs both parents. Suddenly I saw a whole new world of possibilities. We were able to envision, and of course, I had to hold his hand through it a little bit. He's at that place with me now, but it took a few years. I was suddenly able to see a world where there are two happy homes rather than one unhappy one. So that was the first rewiring that happened. And then that opened up the possibility of me stepping into my power as a storyteller and being more than a freelance content writer. I remember making a decision then and there that I'm not going to say no to my life anymore. And as a single mother, to go to a new town where you know nobody, that was the first step. That was an absolutely liberating choice that I made. And it came from rewiring my brain, from telling my brain that My story is now all about possibilities. And starting my publishing house there in a place where I knew nobody, going into those little dusty lanes in Pune, looking for a printer who knew how to do paperback binding, who knew how to source the paper I wanted, getting quotes, going to Bombay and finding a printer there, getting quotes from them, finding out where paper comes in from, how to, and what the printing quality should be, and then putting together a team of women who used to sit around my dining table every morning. Graphic designers, editors, interns, all these people who had given up their careers because of marriage, of kids, and a couple of them were also divorced and they wanted to start afresh. So the rewiring was a constant process. But there was no doubt. And in that moment where him and I sat down and decided mutually that we're going to make two happy homes, I think that just opened up the whole world for me. Suddenly, my definition of happiness changed, because then at that moment, my definition of happiness wasn't dependent on what I had been told. Suddenly, I had the power to create my own rules, to create my own world. And I just marched from that path.
That is so powerful. There's a few things that you said that is like, wow, hold on. Yes, it's true, but let's talk about it a bit more. One of the things you said was, and I resonate with this, you said that where we are told to live in a household, say yes to the man, to stay together because of the sake of the children, and you only see that as a possibility.
Yes.
But you used a very interesting word, which is luxury.
Yes.
You have the luxury to choose differently.
Mm-hmm.
That word gives me goosebumps, because why is it a luxury for a woman to choose herself, or to say no to abuse, or to say, I'm a better mom when I feel more in control of my life?
Yep. I think it's attributed to the word luxury because that's the story we are told. And when I use that in this context of my own story, that I had the luxury of doing this, what I mean is I had the luxury of rearranging the family dynamics that I shared with this guy, which a lot of women don't. A lot of times they're not able to still, keep in touch with the other parent, let alone having any kind of an equation. So I had the luxury of taking control of that and being able to tell him that, okay, we'll do this. Both of us are, agreeing on this, but we'll still be family. I still want to see you in my child's life. So I had the luxury of having this person who didn't question it, that you're the woman, who are you to make rules? At that point, he understood that now it's a different story. Now I have to leave my patriarchal stories behind. And it took him a few years. It took him about 5 years to get to that place. But by God, did he work hard. So I had the luxury of having a hardworking co-parent with me who contributed to that story. But when I look back on my story, when I look back on what I have done, what I have made of myself, the role model that I've become for my child, and being able to look my 6-year-old self in the eye and say, we did it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I gave myself the luxury of making that choice.
And it's so true what you're saying, Devangini, where we can get to choose. Like, you made the choice, like, we're still a family. We're not living together. We're not in a marriage together, but we're still family. We're still going to be the parent to our child. And we're going to put that as the highest goal for us both to work together.
Yes.
And making that decision is one point, but living up to that decision, working towards that decision, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of grace and gratitude and also humility to stay true to that promise to yourself.
Day after day.
When you say like it took him 5 years, I'm curious to see and hear how did you bring the humility and the grace into your own life to uphold that? Because I'm divorced too, so I have to manage in a different way, and I chose differently. I definitely chose the fact, like, okay, he's always going to be the dad. There's nothing changing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also chose not to be involved in his life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of his life. He can be absolutely a part of the children's life, but not mine. And I chose that segregation because that brought me peace. You didn't choose that segregation. You chose, like, we're going to still stay together. We're going to still build on this relationship for the sake of our child, which is so amazing that you were able to get there with that determination. So tell us more about how did you uphold that promise to yourself?
There were a couple of things, Tina. The first thing was I realized very early on that if I have to make this work for myself more than anybody else, he came later, the child came later, the whole world came later. This had to work for me. Getting a divorce had to work for me. I was very clear on that. And in order to do that, I had to forgive someone who never apologized. I had to say, okay, you know what? I'm just zooming out a lot. I'm seeing the karmic contract. I'm seeing the soul contract here. I'm honoring that. And I'm changing it. I'm changing the terms because I can. And the other thing that I very mindfully did was I separated the toxic ex-husband from the father of my child. Much like you did. Much like you did. Suddenly his toxicity didn't matter because I had no more expectations.
Yes.
I was done. It didn't matter. It was not my headache anymore. When he enters my house, it's my rules and he knows it. And I taught him to do that. It was nowhere in his DNA, generational DNA. It was nowhere in his karmic DNA. But he needed to learn that. And I realized this is what I have to be to him in this lifetime. Not a subservient wife. He needs this or he won't have chosen me. Our child needs us to do this for each other or she won't have chosen us. This is how you rectify. This is how you redo. This is how you rearrange. And this is how you rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's very easy.
Willing. There has to be a willingness from both sides.
There has to be willingness, yes.
Yeah.
His willingness took a while to catch up, but I had already made the choice. So he knew that there's only one way in which I can keep in touch with my child. She's not going to let me off the hook. And I did not ask him to apologize. I did not ask him to, make up for all the atrocities. I did not ask him to pay for the things he had done. I didn't make him pay for anything, all the things he had done to me. There wasn't ever a taunt. There wasn't any of that.
So and I admire you for that. I truly do admire you for that because there is, again, so much humility needed to let go of that part of the story that was very real.
Yes.
And also, when we choose not to make the other parent wrong, we are honoring our children.
Yes.
And they don't feel that they are doing anything wrong. There's something wrong with them because mom and dad don't talk bad about each other. They respect each other. They have love and care for each other in a different way.
Ashani, my daughter, she always says this. She's 15 now, very, very wise. And she always says that, thank you for not giving me a divorce to recover from.
Ooh, chills.
So that's a big one. That's a big one. Instead, she saw a mommy who got up and showed up, not just for paying bills and doing anything to pay bills, but she saw a mommy who got up and showed up for her real purpose, who decided in that moment of disconnect that this is real, but I unchoose this reality. I'm making my own. And she saw a dad who, despite his conditioning, despite everything he had seen, he gradually learned to show up without being asked to first pay for his sins because they were not categorized as such. I let it go. But she's very aware of what a red flag is because I asked him one question, which is how we came to the conclusion that we must end our marriage. I asked him, would you like your daughter to grow up and end up with somebody like you? And he honored the sentiment behind that question instead of taking offense. So I must give him credit there.
Absolutely.
So we are here now.
And Devangini, forgiveness is not for other people. Forgiveness is for yourself.
It's for yourself.
It's not about I'm forgiving him for these things he did. It's actually about I'm forgiving myself for allowing those things.
Absolutely. And that's why I said in the beginning that I had to decide first how I wanted this divorce to work out for me. More than him, more than the child, more than the rest of the world or society or anybody. I had to decide how I wanted this to work out for me. I wanted it to work out fabulously. That's all I knew.
Before we dive back in, I have something transformative to share with you. It's called the Alignment Collective. Release, Rebuild, and Rise. My signature group coaching program designed to help you unlock the life you deserve. Every month, we focus on a key area of life, from health to relationships, career, and more. In the first 2 weeks, we energetically release what's holding you back. Then we shift into calling in the abundance and clarity that you desire. And in the final week, we come together for a powerful group coaching, sharing our wins, our challenges, and raising the collective energy. Are you ready to release what doesn't serve you, rebuild your foundation, and rise into your potential? Try it for 50% off with discount code GROWTH. Visit matinasingh.com/meditation. The link is also found in the description. I can't wait to support you on this journey. This is a prime example where we all make key decisions as to what our lives is going to be like and how this is going to evolve moving forward. And sadly, not everyone has the luxury of choosing to end a marriage or to choose from a higher awareness, from an awareness of the lives that they're inspiring to live versus the pain they're feeling in the moment.
Absolutely.
What you're sharing that in that moment, you decided to look at the aspiration of a life that you are wanting to create versus you did me wrong here.
I wasn't at all consumed with that part after I moved out. When I moved out, I was like, there's not going to be any chest beating. I'm not going to cry over this. I did cry, obviously, when the papers were signed and we were granted the decree. I cried there. And he held my hand while I cried. He made a few jokes also while I cried. And I was like, are you crazy? And, but no, there was no chest beating. There was no wearing my suffering like a badge. I was clear about that.
So many men and women get lost in the pain they feel in that moment and are unable for years and years to come to get out of it. This is a decision we get to make every day. This is not a decision you make once and you're like, okay, now it's going to be like this. And this is exactly what you're sharing, Devangini. You made a decision when you got divorced, like, I'm going to create the best life. I'm going to have 2 amazing, great homes for my daughter to see and grow up from.
Yeah.
Right? That decision requires actions, requires humility, requires the rewiring and the rechoosing of things so that the goal is the highest and the goal can become the reality.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say to someone who is either at a pivotal point in their life where they're disconnected or at a point of their life where they're like, okay, I've gone through the divorce, but I'm still so angry and so hurt by his or her doing that I can't see past it?
I'll give you a small example of my thought process and then I'll tell you what I would say to somebody, right?
Yeah.
As an example, I would say, I remember talking to a friend and they said, how are you able to do this at all? I was like, if we had to continue to hold a grudge against each other, we would have stayed in the marriage. It's pointless to leave, right? We left each other because we were convinced that there's something better for ourselves, for the way we show up for the child and for the child. So that is like the logical explanation that you give to the brain. Now, coming down to what I would say to somebody who's going through it or has just gone through it, but is still consumed by pain and anger and, this feeling of having been wronged. That's completely normal. It happens. What I would say to that person is, now this is something that we do in neuroscience also. Do not ask why. Do not even ask what. It's very easy to get into that story of this, and this happened to me. Why did it happen to me? Mm-hmm. That can be a slippery slope and it leads nowhere but a black hole. Instead, ask what's next. When you start asking what's next, your brain instantly starts to look for evidence of how can this be better? How can I make this better? What can be better? Clearly, it can be better, or I wouldn't have taken this decision. I wouldn't have taken this route. I would have let my GPS continue to take me on the path that it was taking me, right? You made a choice to make a change. Now look for that change. Don't keep going back to the things that made you take that choice. It nullifies the choice.
Yeah.
Everything's zero then. You want to build, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would say to somebody.
I love it. Focus on the building and what's next versus why did this happen? Why me? Why this? Why that? It's not serving you. The why question, it's past-based. It is so past-based. And the one thing we can't change is the past.
No, and it's pointless, right? Would you want to go back there?
No.
If you ask someone in their full honesty, in complete vulnerability to tell you, do you really think you could have changed something? They'll always say no. So then why travel back there?
Yeah.
And everything happens twice, as per neuroscience and psychometrics. Everything happens twice. Once in your imagination and once in reality. Now, when you are constantly reliving the past, guess what your reality will look like?
And we do that so often. We repeat
do.
The same scenarios in our minds. So now our mind's like, did this happen 100 times already? I thought it happens once. Okay, 100 times. We need to be more careful now.
I'll give you my own example. I was stuck in such a loop of repeating unhelpful patterns. I found myself repeating it on the exact same date and at the exact same time. It went on for years. Even I'm not immune. Nobody is. We're all spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yes.
So we're meant to be falling into these traps or at least encountering these traps. What we make of them is what defines our spiritual existence, our soul's purpose.
Yeah.
In this vessel, in this body.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly feel that the more that we honor ourselves, the more that we get to connect with the spiritual side of ourselves, understand the wealth that lives in us, understand the luxury from a very luxurious place versus like the whole idea of I can choose differently. Like, yeah, you can. So we get to choose this. We get to live this. We get to experience life in that way. And you are sharing so beautifully the thought process of what is behind the choices you made, what's behind the way that you were able to let go of the past and be fully immersed in what's next.
Yeah, even though what's next hadn't yet happened, but you just use the correct set of words, which I, teach people so often. Oftentimes we're like, oh, I had to do this, or I have to do this, or, when you replace it with, I get to do this, the same thing takes on a different meaning. The same action takes on a different purpose. The same action gives you a different reward rather than a punishment.
Yeah.
So I get to is a very powerful statement. That's a very, very big one.
And so often we say we have to. It's like, no, you don't have to. You're choosing to.
You choose to, you get to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So take back power by saying, I get to.
That is so beautiful. Now, with all your magic, with all your learnings of your own skills, of your own magic, of your own ability to showcase the power of words, the power of belief systems, and how you utilize NLP with writing and scripting and being in this mastery of understanding the way to convey a message is powerful. Conveying your own life is the next level. So I feel anytime I speak with you, Devangini, there's this dance going on where you have your professional side and your wisdom and your gifts, and then you have this own life and experience where you're merging both of them together and finding the ability to dance with the limitations, to dance with the hardships, to dance with whatever is next right now, where surrender plays a huge role into it. Yes. Even in that moment where you both chose to end that marriage, there was surrender.
Oh, yes. Surrender into the great unknown. Neither of us knew anyone in our families or friend circle who had been divorced. It was a huge, big one.
What would you say is the power of surrender, though?
People feel like they need to surrender when they're feeling powerless. Surrendering is actually a state of power. It's a state of being in ultimate power. The way you defined what I do is actually so accurate, and it is actually that playful. Being able to tell that story on a day-to-day basis and being able to apply to scripting, or whether it's writing a book or simply helping someone choose words differently to redo the neuroscience of the brain in alignment with the quantum field that's around them.
Yes.
Because our brains, or the way our physiology is made up, it absolutely mirrors how the universe is made up.
Yeah.
It's the exact same engineering. Now, that's no coincidence. And I think you actually, gave me the bottom line when you said incomplete alignment. Now, surrender is a matter of knowing that I don't need to wait for that to happen to me to be that version I want to be. Mm-hmm. The reality that is ideal for me, I don't need to wait for that to happen. There's a lot of power in being able to say that I can already be that version. I can already be that person. I get to get up and be that person. And what a lot of people define as limitations or challenges or problems are actually defining moments. You can either define the exact disconnect you're happening and what that's happening and what you would rather connect to, or you can define, more and more of the evidence of, oh, okay, I'm in pain. This is my comfort zone. I'm staying here.
Mm-hmm.
You get to make that choice. So it entirely depends on how you look at it. But surrendering is a place where you arrive when you know that, okay, A, time means nothing, and B, reality is created by me. When you understand those two things, when you understand the science of those two, and there is nothing in human vocabulary, in any language, to properly explain this.
Mm-hmm.
It's an intuition, it's a feeling. You can come close to it. That's why I'm not going deeper into this, especially the time aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can only feel it. You can feel that moment where you're like, oh, there was no past, there is no present, there is no future, but this is the past, this is the present, this is the future. And guess what? I'm going into it. I'm going fully into it. I'm locking in, I'm committing. But as that version of myself that's enjoying what I want to create. Because guess what? Reality is here.
For someone who is so stuck in the 3D world, understanding the depth of what you just said can become difficult.
Yes.
How would you define or the importance of spirituality to understand the depth of what you just said?
I wouldn't call it spirituality to begin with. Because if someone is having trouble understanding it, that means spirituality is not going to do it for them. The word spirituality, or if I come at them from the angle of spirituality, it's probably not going to do it for them. I'll take the quantum route. If you believe that everything is science backed or number backed, or I signed up for this, or I moved into this house, therefore I have rent to pay at the end of each month.
Mm-hmm.
They are coming at it from that angle, right? If they are so stuck in the 3D. How I would explain it to them is, if you were someone who is not struggling to pay those bills or that rent at the end of each month, who would you be? Be that already.
Okay. Yep. I see
Look at that. Look at that point in time as a point that has already happened. It's not a far removed point of time. It's not a point of time that, oh, how nice it would be to get there. It's an accessible point of time because it's already happened.
Yeah.
When you ask yourself those what ifs, you arrive at the what's next much faster than you could have imagined. And you leave behind the what happened and why did it happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
That is how you condense time.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just a spiritual concept.
It's not, but I know, because I know you, that spirituality has been huge for you in understanding the depth. So thank you for answering it in such a 3D experience, because I'm sure it's going to help someone to understand it in a better way. From a spiritual perspective, because we have a lot of people who are on a spiritual journey who are seeking more of what is living inside of them. And also because I know that you are a very spiritual person, how did it help you get the deeper meaning behind it's all in the now?
When you're able to see the stories that you have been repeating lifetime over lifetime, when you're able to see how it colors your aura, how that aura colors your everyday, how that colors the choices you make, I think you're able to define your now in a far more intentional way than you would have, instead of just sleepwalking through the same patterns lifetime after lifetime. When you see a person who's either done something to you or done something for you, typically those are the two scenarios in which we hold the memory of a person inside of us. Oh, they did that to me, or no, they did this for me, right? Mm-hmm. When you see the larger karmic contract, when you see what they have done for you or to you from the point of view of what is this doing for my soul and for my soul's purpose? How is this taking me further and bringing the future moment into the now? I'm telling you, nothing else matters. All that matters in that moment, in that now, is the story you're writing of that now. What is my story of the now? I have to do right by my soul then. I'm not at all concerned. In fact, I thank this person for coming here and giving me this prompt. It's like giving a prompt to AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for giving me this prompt.
Love it. Love it. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. So we have a ritual on this podcast where I get to ask you a question that the previous guests have left.
Oh,
and you get to leave a question for the next guest after we're done the recording. And the question I have for you today is, what makes you happy?
Oh, writing, creating, being able to help people tell their stories and tap into the untold stories that have somehow had an influence on the story they're living, and then making choices accordingly. I think stories, words, all of that just makes me happy.
And you're like a magician in that, for sure. I love how you write, and I love how you ask the questions to allow others to really think about their story and think about what part of their story do they want to share and want to lean into and want to create from. I've had the pleasure of learning from that angle for sure when we brought out our collective book, The Desi Divorcee, and we shared from a place of healing versus hurt, from a place of authenticity where other readers can find the synergies of resonance in their own stories. And that was such a beautiful process, and there was such a beautiful message that we gave through the book, which I'm so grateful for to you. And I can't wait for anyone who is interested to connect with Devangini to look into the description, reach out, connect, ask questions, and really truly understand that everything is in the now. Everything is right now. What you're going to decide, what you're going to do in the next minute, hour, day, week, month, and so forth. Because when we make daily choices, that's when we are scripting our life. That's when we are writing the empty pages. That's how we are writing and rewiring how we want to live and how we want to experience life. So thank you so much, Devangini, for sharing your wisdom with us today and being so raw and authentic as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. I hope this episode has helped you to feel less alone in finding tools towards a life which is overflowing with love and purpose. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to reach more individuals who are seeking healing and personal growth just like you. And don't forget to take a screenshot and share your aha moments on your Instagram stories and tag me, Matina. See you next week. Take care.